Welcome to Cafe DC. I'm Faz Rahman, and our guest today is a person who has basically devoted all his life to a very noble cause. And despite having a full-time job here in this country as an engineer, Mr. Anwar Khan, who is with us here today, he spends a lot of time in supporting people from around the world. So let's welcome him and talk to him about his passion and the energy. Where did you get all this energy, Mr. Anwar Khan? Welcome, first of all, welcome to Cafe DC.
Yeah.
It's great to be, with you today here.
Thank you, Faz.
So please let us know, first of all, of course, in my very short intro, I did say a few things about you, but the organization, Obat Helpers, that you founded almost probably 10 years ago, maybe.
Yes.
And then, you're closely working with the stranded Pakistanis in Bangladesh now. So first of all, why such a strange name? What does this stand for? Obat or Obat Helpers, O-B-A-T Helpers, right?
That's
so
correct.
Please enlighten us.
Thank you, Faz, for inviting me to this program. I'm really honored. Regarding the Obat Helpers, basically when we came to know about all the suffering of these people living in the camps since last 40 years, in 2004 when I initially come to know about this issue, we realized that we have to do something for them. And then we started a family-based initiative, a family-based initiative. And at that time, we decided that what we should name that organization. So what we did that my parents' name and my wife's parents' name has been selected for the name of the organization. So what we did that we picked the first alphabet of my parents' name and my wife's parents' name. And actually, my father and my wife's father are the real brothers. And these are the only two members in their family who migrated from India to Pakistan in 1947. So this is the name came from Obat. O is my father's first name, Obadullah. My mother's name was Bilqis.
O-B, okay.
And my my wife's father's name was Amanullah. And my aunt name was Tayyaba. So this is the way Obat comes up.
Beautiful, very beautiful. Actually, this is also, this is a tradition in our culture that we do all these good deeds, good stuff for the benefit of our elders who've been deceased.
That's
so
right.
First of all, this is a good cause, and I'm glad you explained the nature of this name. So initially, you basically, just by listening to this story, the initiative was limited to the family, and you didn't think of it being so big now that it spans literally like 2 or 3 different continents. And you have been very successful in not just highlighting the plight, but you have also changed the narrative. And what I mean by this, by talking to you and by listening to several, watching actually several videos on this issue, what I have seen is before it just used to be the repatriation of the Pakistanis from Bangladesh to Pakistan. But your focus has been to help them while, just making sure that it doesn't matter to you whether they stay here or elsewhere, but, working with their situation, to improve
Exactly.
their lives. That's been your focus. Am I right?
Absolutely, you are 100% right. Basically, what our vision is that we need to empower them. And if we can empower them by educating or by providing them the proper tools, so it doesn't matter where they live. They can live a better life with dignity and pride. So this was our goal, because initially when we started this early in 2004, our focus was mainly to help them to provide food and other necessities of the life, like clothing and other things. But very soon we realized that this is not going to change the future of the people living in the camp. We need to empower them. So early in 2005, we have actually started our educational program. And we have started building schools, tutoring centers, computer training centers, and other educational programs, providing kids scholarship so they can go and study in the colleges. And in 2006, we started to empower them financially, and we started a microfinancing program. And alhamdulillah, at this moment, we invested almost a couple $100,000 in our microfinancing program, and more than 1,800 families basically are self-sustained, and they're living a good life and better life, and also they start moving out of the camps.
Those who have joined your program.
That's correct.
Okay. Anwar Sahab, I have two questions. First, let us know about when you started this initiative, as you pointed out. What was their situation? Why did you feel compelled to do something for them? What really happened, and why was it so different from other areas of misery and gloom that you see all around the world? So why did you choose? First of all, let us know the plight of those Pakistanis living in Bangladesh, and why did you think that was something of a sort of a priority for you, to rather than focusing issues in Pakistan or maybe other issues around the world, you chose this issue?
Yeah, I need to go back a little
Please.
bit in the history. Actually, I have a very deep connection to this issue. I raised in East Pakistan, presently Bangladesh, and I was very fortunate that after separation of East Pakistan and West Pakistan, I moved, me and my family moved to West Pakistan, and I completed my education. I did my engineering, and after a couple of years, we moved to the United States in early 90s, and since then I'm here. But unfortunately, I was not aware that people are still living in the camps in Bangladesh. And what happened in 2004, there was a gentleman, he works for NASA and he lives in Virginia. His name is Dr. Syed Ismail. He went to Bangladesh for some personal visit, and he went to some of the camps. And when he visited some of the camps, he was very much shocked, and he wrote a summary of his visit, and that summary was sent back to ISNA to publish in their monthly newsletter. And someone passed that summary.
ISNA is the Islamic Society of North America.
Islamic Society of North America. And my wife was working at that time at ISNA, and she brought that information to me. When I read that, I was really, number one, I was shocked and feel guilty. I was thinking that me and my family may be still in the camps, but we are so fortunate that we have moved to Pakistan, and I did my education now in the United States. I'm working for one of the largest automaker in the United States. So that guilt, I feel myself that we should have to do something for them.
Anwar Sahab, before we proceed, for the benefit of those who are not very well aware of the background of this issue, can you please tell us why those people ended up in camps? What was the reason that they were transferred to these camps?
Sure. I will start from 1947. In 1947, when India and Pakistan became two different separate countries, Pakistan was consist of two different parts, East Pakistan and West Pakistan, and they are almost 1,000 miles apart, and India was in between those two parts of the Pakistan. East Pakistan was close to the state of Bihar and western part of Bengal. So most of the people who migrated from India to Pakistan are from the different part, belongs to different part of India. But most of the people from Bihar, they choose to migrate to the East
To
Pakistan.
the East Pakistan.
Because East Pakistan
yeah.
was closest
Mhm.
to Indian state of Bihar. So these people, normally known as Biharis, Urdu speaking people, they lived there in 1971 when there was a war between India and Pakistan. And basically the reason of the war is that the Bangladesh, East Pakistan want an independent state as Bangladesh. So there was a war, and during this war, this group of people basically sided with the Pakistan army and Pakistan.
So the Biharis who had migrated from Bihar to East Pakistan,
Exactly.
now were siding with the Pakistani army and the state of Pakistan.
Yeah, because
Against in the fight against India.
Against
Okay.
Indian. So the one of the reason to have this helping the Pakistan army, because they migrated from India to a vision to be in Pakistan. So they don't want Pakistan to be divided
Plus,
further.
you know, one important factor, Anwar Sahib, is the rebellion. You know, the local population, of course, rebelled against the state of Pakistan, the Bengalis, right?
That's correct.
They were also fighting for independence, for the independence
For the
of-
freedom,
of-
yeah.
Okay.
So what happened that after December 1971, when Bangladesh was declared as an independent country,
State, yeah.
then all these people now considered a traitor. And there was a lot of...
So the new state of Bangladesh considered all these Biharis or those who had sided with Pakistan, the state of Pakistan and the army of Pakistan.
Right.
They were considered as, of course, you know, not Bangladeshis or traitors.
Right.
And okay, so please.
So there was a lot of law and order situation, and there are a lot of incidents happen during that time frame. So Red Cross and Indian Army, they decided that to save the life of these people need to be moved from different places and put a centralized locations so they can save the lives of these people. So what happened that...
So Indian Army was there in you know, so it was what was still East Pakistan, or in Bangladesh had just been created.
Right.
So the forces, they basically decided that these Biharis who were scattered around the country, they were moved into these camps, right?
That's
and
correct.
I just want to emphasize one more thing, and these Biharis were actually, you know, very well educated, middle class, upper middle class people who were forced to move and then live in these camps.
That's
okay,
correct.
Please, yeah.
So what happened that in 13 cities, almost 116 camps were formed. And the Indian Army was providing the security as needed, and Red Cross was providing all the food and other necessities of the life they need. And basically there was an agreement made in India, between India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, that these people are considered as Pakistanis and they will be moved to Pakistan very soon. So after that agreement, the migration of these people, repatriation of these people have started, and I think around 150,000 people has been migrated between 1972 to 75.
From these camps.
From
to
these
Pakistan.
camps to
Okay.
Pakistan.
So close to 200,000 were repatriated.
Right, to
And then-
Pakistan.
Okay.
Yeah, but I just want to add one quick other comments that technically government of Pakistan has divided the repatriation in 3 different stages. They first pick all those peoples who belongs to West Pakistan and they have been moved to East Pakistan for the job reasons. So say for example somebody is working in PIA or bank and they belongs to West Pakistan, they transfer to East Pakistan. So those people came in the first categories. Second category of the people were those people who have some sort of relationship in Pakistan, west part of Pakistan.
Some family connections.
Some family connection. One of the reasons behind that so they can manage the initial burden of the family when they're coming back to West Pakistan. So the second group of people basically moved. So these two groups, almost 90%, more than 90% of these two group of people have been moved from those camps to West Pakistan. Unfortunately, the remaining people who are still suffering in the camps are those who don't have any connection in the West Pakistan or don't have any relationship with the people in the West Pakistan. But still, the thing was that they have been committed by government of Pakistan. The government of Pakistan will take them back, and a lot of things have been happened. A lot of international organizations also involved to make this happen. But unfortunately, due to some political reason, it never happened.
Okay. Anwar Khan, we have to take a very short break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about the issue and also what the outside world can do to help these very unfortunate group of people.
Sure.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
So that part was forgotten by the world totally. So what happened that almost 2 generations in the camp was illiterate. They have no education at all, and they are moving. They are living a life with a really very miserable life.
Welcome back. I'm Faiz Rahman. You're watching Cafe DC. Our guest today is Mr. Anwar Khan, the founder and president of OBAT Helpers, working with the stranded Pakistanis in Bangladesh. And thank you. Welcome back to the show. Let's talk about what can be done to help your organization and what kind of help you require to carry out your mission.
First of all, I just want to give you a little bit more in depth of the situation that will help us to know exactly that what we can do. Almost last more than 30, 35, 40 years, we were trying to, or struggling to bring those people back to Pakistan. Unfortunately, it never happened. And during the meantime, nobody was looking back at how we can provide some immediate help to educate those people, to make people empowered so they can live a better life. So that part was forgotten by the world totally. So what happened that almost 2 generations in the camp was illiterate. They have no education at all, and they are moving. They are living a life with a really very miserable life, without any outside help. One of the things is that the most, like you can say, lowest profile professions they are having nowadays, like rickshaw puller, barbershop,
and mind you, these were the people who came from middle classes.
Exactly.
From around the country. And
that's
they were
correct.
just forced
and
to became overnight poor and then lost everything.
Exactly. Most of the women are working in the other people's house, and even they are not get paid.
So I mean, once again, Anwar Saab, I want to emphasize one more point, and you can also highlight it. I mean, your mission is to help them on the ground. You're not involved into politics of repatriation and basically all the history. Basically, your goal is to help them become better and productive human beings while still living in Bangladesh. So that's what you need some help with, right?
That's correct. So basically, our goal is to move these people from liability to assets. To do that, we are working on different areas, and that's why we are asking help around the world. Most critical and important issue is education. And what we have done that in education area, we have started from the root level to the professional level. So we have preschools where we teaching kids from 4 to 6 years, And after teaching just 1 year, then we are getting them admitted to local schools. What is happening this way, that now we are making sure that these kids have a better relationship and understanding and the communication with the local population of the Bangladesh. So now these kids are their friendship and their environment is changing because they are more close to the local people when they go to school. Besides that, we have almost 8 different schools across different part of the Bangladesh. We have 35 preschools, we have 10 non-formal schools, we have 5 tutoring centers, we have 6 tutoring centers, we have 5 computer training centers, we have almost 3 training centers for women's. So we are doing a lot of different way that we can educate those kids and women, and we are also doing a educational program for adults education, so they have never went to school but now they want to learn. Besides that, we are providing almost 800 scholarships to different level of education for kids. And I will give you a good example here, that in last 40 years the first student has got admitted in medical school from the city of Rangpur. This is the history in the camps, that it never happened before in the camps that anybody get admitted in the medical school.
In all those camps, never ever.
It never happened.
Somebody got admitted into a medical college.
Into medical college.
And because of your efforts.
This is the first time this happened. Now he is in 3rd year. And besides that, we have students in industrial engineering, MBA, BBA. Girls are studying in the nursing. So there are a lot of professional, and also we are starting technical training.
And these folks are stateless, by the way, right? They are not Bangladeshi citizens. They don't have Bangladeshi passports.
That is correct. They don't have Bangladeshi passport, but I am thankful to the government of Bangladesh for one area, because now they have enlisted them in the voter list. They have now their ID cards, so they have right to vote. They have ID card, but still they are not allowed to get a passport. So this is an area that we are looking forward that this should be resolved.
And the reason is the government of Bangladesh considers them as Pakistanis, right? Pakistani citizens.
We don't know exactly the reason, because it has never been explained, and never been the reason has been justified officially. But whenever anybody apply and the address is the camp address, the passport is denied. But they didn't say and ask any reason for. But since they have the voter right, they have the ID card, this should not be a reason. But we are looking forward that.
But these are the people who actually opted for Pakistan. They refused to become Bangladeshi citizens after
at one time,
war,
yes.
Right? Okay.
That is correct.
But has that changed now? Are they willing to just stay there and become a full-fledged citizens of Bangladesh?
Most of the youth, yes, they are looking forward to be the part of the new country, Bangladesh, where they're born and raised. Some of the families that are, especially the divided families, they are still interested to go back to Pakistan, because most of their family members are in Pakistan.
They were able to come to Pakistan.
They want to go to Pakistan. But back to your question, yes, there are most of the youth and young generations, they want to stay and live in Bangladesh.
Of course, through your talk and through these pictures and video, what's really happening and what you have done is really admirable and commendable. I wish we had a little bit more time to go into the details, even though half an hour is a whole, it's quite a long time for a TV show, but still we hope to see you again with more success stories, and we wish that the plight of these people comes to an end. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you very much for watching Cafe DC. You will have some information on the screen about this effort, this initiative. Hopefully you will understand the cause, and those who can help should help. Thank you.